It's Dr. Manny. Welcome to Asylum. Let's get it. All right, so today's topic is toxic people and dysfunctional interactions and how they interfere with your ability to execute on your destiny, on your vision, and your ability to work in your purpose and maintain integrity. Hey, Connie. Welcome to Asylum. Thanks for joining. Hey, Ashley. Welcome to Asylum. Thanks for joining. Okay, so my goal as I'm creating these is, hey Carmen, welcome to Asylum. Thanks for joining. My goal as I create these is to make it that each, so I'm swiping y'all's comments out of the way, not because I'm ignoring you, but because the way my attention is set up. So what I'll do is in a bit I will swipe left if I forget to. I was going to say if I forget to, for y'all to remind me, but you can't because I can't see you, right? So I will remind myself, hopefully, occasionally to swipe so I can see who's coming in. Wait, I see that my hypno buddy, Joel, Joel has been doing hypnosis for 15 years, stage hypnosis. He's amazing. Joel is here. So Joel and I got our hypnosis certification together, so it's awesome to have him here. We have some awesome stuff planned with music and hypnosis, speaking of neuromusicology. So that's going to be awesome. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Ashley. Hey, Sherry. Sherry and I went to high school together. I think, Sherry, we've known each other since, like, middle school, right? I want to say we were in middle school choir together. Thanks for listening to the new track, Joel. The main thing about that track is the intention in it is a combination of inspiration and awe. The goal of the awe is to shift the frame of reference to a larger, wider construal. Well, you know all this, to drop into alpha state. And by getting to alpha state, less of the energy is focused on external stimuli, fight, flight, and material things, and more of the energy, and this is some of Joel Dispenza's work, mainly the stuff that he reviews and studies in Becoming Supernatural. This will all become important and tie back to the main topic in a second, so just bear with me, bigger picture. So with alpha waves, your energy and attention is tuned inwards, such that you're listening to, your attention is tuned inwards, so you're able to manage your heart rate to get into heart coherence, and you're able to create a sense of safety, and you're not in fight-flight. And since you're not in fight-flight, you're not locked on your environment and being reactive. Okay? Now, I want to step back a bit and hit a couple of key points about it. Hey, Tamara, welcome to Asylum. Thanks for joining. Okay, let me see. I'm tempted to try something. Joel, are you still here? Oh man, it's not giving me the option to bring you on camera. I wanted to bring you on camera so we can talk about like how this applies to hypnosis, the whole concept of auto-suggestion and the suggestions that come from people you have rapport with and people that you trust. Yeah, you're still here. Why can't I bring you in? Oh man. All right, well, you're here with me in spirit, bro. Okay, so I'm going to swipe again so I can't see you guys so that we get this ADD of mine under control, right? Though I don't believe in labels and identifying with diagnoses, right? All right, let me swipe. Okay, let's get it. Okay, so basically your brain works on these constant loops, and the loops are fractal, as in they're embedded in each other, like nested Russian dolls. You're running some sort of thought loop at all times. Some loops are shorter construal. When you're scared, the loops are super narrow, because it's like, oh shit, what do I do now? 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 As opposed to, as you calm down, those same cycles happen, but because of the sense of certainty, a sense of control, and a sense of self-efficacy, the loops run over wider periods of time. Your relationship with time changes when you're not in fight-flight, because you're able to say, okay, you'll be able to say to a friend or someone with a sense of integrity, hey, I want to see you on Friday. I trust myself to still be in a state of mind where I want to see you on Friday, despite the fact that it's, and I use Tuesday because it's Tuesday, so it's easy. Because even though it's Tuesday, I trust myself to be able to take state-independent action on Friday. In order to take state-independent action, which means action that's independent of how you're feeling in the moment, you need willpower. You need to be able to notice how you feel in the moment, because that's important. You need to notice the urges to say stay home, to cancel, to do something more interesting. And then you need to be able to evaluate in that moment and still pull out your commitment, and not only your commitment, but your why you're honoring the commitment. In a lot of cases, it becomes about the relationship with the person. the fact that you guys have a shared vision and the person is depending on you to maintain your integrity so that they, in turn, can feel a sense of integrity, stability, and safety in the world. Essentially, so that you're honoring their calendar, they're honoring your calendar, you guys are able to be synergistic, they have a sense of trust, and as such, when they're thinking to Friday, they're able to stay in alpha state as well instead of fight, flight, beta waves, which are sympathetic arousal of something that may or may not happen. Okay, that becomes a matter of, in some people's case, self-doubt, because they wonder if you're that good a friend, if you're going to show up, if you don't show up, what it means about them. All these things, I'm setting a frame as to why these are the good things that happen. These are the healthy ways of being. This is presence. Okay, when you're present, you're able to trust the things that you have lined up, planned, and predicted. And beyond that, you're able to trust that your sense of self, your identity, your sense of integrity, and sense of wholeness will remain in place despite things not going as planned. You're able to detach from outcomes and perform your action in the present, like fully aware. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back to the loop. I want to go back to the thought loop, because essentially the way we experience our conscious thoughts is most of the day your unconscious mind, your habit system, your mindless self is running stuff. You're running through these routines that you have in your day. You don't need to do much thought for those. You have the opportunity to stay present in the moment. By staying present in the moment, you're not caught up in the past. You're not beating yourself up about your old self. You're not feeling stuck. You're not feeling incapable or incapable. You're not feeling like trapped and unable to change. You're also not caught in the future. And as such, you're not either in a worry state, which feels bad, where you're not able to plan and your engine is revving because you're like, oh God, I'm not going to be able to do it. And then so you pop back into those beta waves, that higher frequency, that fight, flight, sympathetic cortisol-based frequency. Another state of not being present is when you're future casting, when you're imagining an outcome and it looks good, but you stay in it because either the present is too painful, so you don't, for you, and you don't want to face it, and so you sort of defend your ego by staying in the ego narration of what it's going to be like instead of what it is now. If you watch some of my earlier videos, you've heard me discuss that it's important to have the energy in place to be able to hold two thoughts in mind. We can't do that when our working memory, which is our experience, where we store our experience of consciousness, if our working memory is taxed by what's called identity threat, then your brain contracts into that fight-flight ego defense mode, protecting the image, protecting the illusion, protecting the persona and the mask, because you get afraid of, if you contact the truth, if you're connected with the truth, what will it mean? All right? Now, with that being said, as humans, we create reality in a relational way, and whether it's relating to yourself with positive self-talk, auto-suggestion, spending time in the mirror, gestures of self-love, choosing to identify with and surround yourself with tribes of people who reflect your truth as opposed to reflecting the illusion that you want to put out there. People who don't need your mask, people who love you as your authentic self. So these are all aspects of thriving. Going back, I said I would talk about the cycle, but I think other stuff caught my attention in my unconscious in the meanwhile, and I ended up going down those rabbit holes. So I'll put the disclaimer. These videos, essentially, this is how I organize certain thoughts that aren't necessarily fully formed, but by bringing them to you, I can see which ones are most useful to you and which ones are worth the effort of actually having my team, actually transcribing them and having my team edit them. And then beyond that, I'm able to clarify the thoughts when I look back to see which ones you find most valuable, incorporate your questions, turn it into something in writing and organized so that you can read it in a more linear way than I ever thought in my life. Yeah, everything you read from me, like, not yet the social media posts, but most of the stuff you read from me has gone through a significant editing and linearization process, because that's not how I think. I think in music, sound, and abstract complex patterns. So there's that. Okay? I say that because when you're dealing with toxic people and dysfunctional interactions, they don't honor your thinking style. They don't honor the way thoughts come to mind. So the way thoughts come to mind for just about everyone, and in my experience, is that something happens in the environment that catches my attention. It turns my attention towards it, and as such, my system goes into an immediate fight-flight evaluation. Is this a threat? Is it an opportunity? So there's four means that we use to remember this in marketing for real quick. When something happens in someone's environment, there's an opportunity. Now, is this an opportunity to run because this is something that's going to eat me? Is this an opportunity to fight it because it looks delicious and I want to kill it to eat it, or I want to kill it to survive? Fight, flight, feed. Well, I kind of conflated feed and fight, but fight is opportunity to beat it. Feed is an opportunity where I think I can kill it and eat it, and it looks delicious. Or the fourth F, can I screw it? Reproduction. These are the core drives. Now, when something comes into your environment, there are some more complex drives that may kick in. There are mixes of those, and some that have evolved and been taught. But when something surprise startles you, those are the first things you evaluate. Now, once you've passed through this evaluation process, an urge emerges. You're going to have this urge. Your first impulse is going to be a survival impulse. Based on your state of equanimity, your state of perceived arousal, your evaluation, and how much the fear or the commitment to another one of your core values kicks in. Based on how that happens, you choose an action, and you choose it to different levels of abruptness and well thought outedness. You might take action in a way that's not well thought out if you perceive this to be a threat, or you perceive it to be something scarce or urgent, such that the window of opportunity is narrow, and even your most flubbed and worst attempt to get it will still give you either practice or the opportunity to eat, survive, procreate, or get up out of there. So you take that rapid action. Now, thing is that with those urges, those urges happen. That lets you know what your belief system is. In a lot of cases, those urges can be connected to a limiting belief. Let's see. So now, that's your natural loop. You evaluate and then you take an action based on what you believe to be the truth in that moment, okay? And what you value, if you can pull up your values in your mind. What interferes with your ability to pull up those values in your mind is either internal negative self-talk, which is the product of prior dysfunctional interactions, or prior dysfunctional interactions that are coming back to mind in the moment, triggered by some environmental cue, or because you're in that moment having a dysfunctional interaction. Now, the way to identify these dysfunctional interactions is to learn how to recognize toxic people and dysfunctional interactions when you're in them. The way you can identify them when you're in them is because they make you feel bad. Your internal compass is an emotional guidance system. If you can move beyond the initial fear and startle to remember what it is that you want as the outcome, what the intention is, without the threat, without the fear, without the startle, without the being knocked out of present moment, truth-based intentional action-based decision-making and action-taking, if something knocks that process offline, that is a dysfunctional interaction, because we're relational creatures, like I said before. The goal is to surround yourself with loving, supporting, productive people who share your vision, such that you don't spend a bunch of your time trying to explain the reality and truth that you know to be true in this moment with someone who's too busy worrying about the future and imposing it on you, or criticizing you about past mistakes that you made when you're not even there anymore. Okay? Now, I say all this because the goal is to warm up to the point where I tell you how to recognize the 3 key types of dysfunctional interactions that happen. So I want to make sure that I've covered the motivation as to why. Yeah, okay. So what I want to do is I want to go back to talking about the thought loop, just to make sure that I've kind of talked about the details. Now, this thought loop, based on your confidence in that moment as to what is the truth and the confidence of what you want, your desired outcome, and your perception that you'll be able to overcome the obstacles as you understand them between where you are and what you want. If you believe you have enough fuel to achieve point B, then you're confident, you're intrinsically motivated, you have a sense of self-efficacy, you have the vision super clear in your mind, and as such, you're able to spot relevant material cues in the environment so that you can take the next action and the next action. That's how you go into flow state, which is a peak performance state. Again, you drop into that alpha where you're responding to reality, and the dangers that are there become opportunities instead of threats, because each danger is a chance for you to make a decision to demonstrate your courage, to show yourself by choosing to act on it what things are most valuable to you, which eventually ends up being the adversity that leads to the character development. Okay? You are less effective at developing character in toxic environments and dysfunctional interactions. The purpose of dysfunctional interactions is for you in the moment to notice that you feel bad and to use the one skill that we as animals have that plants don't have so much. Get up out of there. Move. Okay? It takes a certain amount of self-efficacy in the moment to realize it's not me, it's the environment, and I need to get clear on who I am without this toxic stuff happening, without these dysfunctional interactions and making me feel inefficacious. Okay? Make sure I've gone through the ideas instead of a framework. Okay. So one example of a dysfunctional interaction would be something like gaslighting, where you know something to be true, and the person with whom you're engaging is altering the reality by amplifying the danger of the situation and bringing your attention to the danger so that you can no longer have the vision in mind, expressing their self-doubt as to your ability to accomplish it, which is essentially a projection of their limiting beliefs and their fears, and you may interpret that as them not believing in you, when really it's their... often I like to remind folks that inconceivable doesn't mean impossible, and as such, just because someone else can't imagine it and they've been defeated in how they pursued it doesn't mean that you can't do it. Okay? So again, you want to have the vision in mind. When the vision is in mind, I discussed in the last video, video 2 in the series, you're in implementation mindset instead of deliberation mindset. In implementation mindset, you're ready to take the next action. You have what's called an action bias. You see each opportunity as not a moment to go into fight, flight, freeze, faint, but to go into what's called tend and befriend, to take care of your health, to nurture yourself, to love yourself, and to take action that, although it's challenging and difficult, becomes a gesture of self-love, because in hindsight, your what they call your remembering self will remember the experience as part of what defines you. Though in the moment, what they call your experiencing self may complain a bit in the moment, and then the complaining is a reminder to return your focus to the present, because you're caught in either one of the stories where you're criticizing yourself about your past and you're not really paying attention to the steps in the moment that are required so as to make this task an opportunity for growth and to convert it into what's called an affordance. In ecological psychology, I think they use the term affordance, which means that you see something in the environment, you recognize the pattern activates a memory, the memory reminds you of opportunities where in the past you've had success, or you've come close to success and have a couple steps you need to take in order to get that win. None of that stuff happens if someone is constraining your working memory by knocking you into beta so that you're running these fast loops and all your energy is being drained. Okay? I think that's enough information for that. Anything else will end up in writing. When I go back and I read the transcript for this, I'll be like, oh, I meant to tell them this. Or the next video I do in the series, I'll bring up and go back and fill in the holes after I've thought through this. Okay? So the technique that's been most effective to recognizing when you are, well, most effective for me, to recognizing when you are in dysfunctional interactions and in toxic relationships is the drama triangle. You recognize the drama triangle by, you use the drama triangle by recognizing how you are behaving in the moment. Now, it's most useful to pull these concepts into mind when you're feeling bad, when you're feeling ineffective, or when you're looking back as the remembering self and realizing that you wish you had done something differently or said something differently or pulled out of an interaction earlier. But, you in the moment, you might have some short-term pleasure, whether it's telling someone 2 extra phrases that you really need to get out, and then realizing that maybe you're married to this person, and you have to, for the rest of their lives, when they look at you, they will remember that you said that phrase. Maybe it's a child of yours, and later on, as they grow older, you because the phrase hurt you, possibly because you remember someone hurting you with the phrase, despite the fact that they got results from you. When the phrase is not in alignment with your values in that moment, when you look back, you kind of beat yourself up and you get into that decreasing your self-esteem and your sense of self-efficacy. So the key thing is you use these concepts when you feel bad. Anytime you're in a negative emotional state, remember you feel stuck. You're not stuck. When you're feeling stuck, you want to evaluate which of these roles am I being constrained into, and what aspect of my current environment is there someone in this moment in a dysfunctional interaction that is making me feel less powerful, less empowered, less capable, less intelligent, less beautiful, less creative, less whatever it is that your identity is that you are, the thing that you have been practicing since childhood, the thing that you know is you. Okay? So before I start on the models of the drama triangle, and I think it's Karpman with a P. If not, it's Karpman. The way I store data, I tend to hold the models, and sometimes because models have been discovered by multiple people with nuances, I tend to forget. I get what's called source amnesia, where I forget some details of who I learned a model from. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that this is not a model that I came up with. It's a model that I came across that has served me well in maintaining positive emotional states and not staying stuck and draining energy in things that don't lead to my desired outcome. All right, so I'm going to pause now and check on y'all. Hold on, let me see. L'Oreal came in. Hey, Cynthia. Welcome to Asylum. Beat it, eat it, breathe it. Yes, thank you, Joel. Hey, Austin. Welcome to Asylum. Hey, Lisa. Thanks for joining me. Welcome to Asylum. Hey, Nichelle. Welcome to Asylum. Nichelle is awesome. Like, I sent Nichelle a couple of my tracks, some of my meditation music, and she literally sent me back videos of her and her crew bumping to my music, and that made it feel real. That was super nurturing. I honor you for that. I am grateful. Thank you so much. Who else is in here? There's 6 of y'all in here, and I don't know exactly who. If you're enjoying this, share it on your timeline so your friends can benefit from it too, so I can get their feedback, and I can accelerate the rate at which I develop these processes, these ideas. Okay? I'm going to swipe back now. Good. Let's get it. Okay, so there are 3 positions in the drama triangle, and the important thing about the drama triangle is when someone takes one of the roles on in the drama triangle, they usually try to force you or knock you into another one of these roles. So when you feel one of these positions, when you're feeling a certain type of way, notice what the other person is doing or what you're imagining that they're doing that's leading to you in this state. The second powerful aspect of the drama triangle is it allows you to do some introspection in private to, when you play back prior events that you feel bad about, you're able to kind of clean up your memory and power yourself so that the next time that cue, that environmental event comes up and you get the urge and you get the emotions, because the urge often has an emotional charge with it. When those emotions come up, you have a split second of recognition. Recognition is recognition. You get to think a thought again, which means that you're retrieving a memory and realizing that this is something happening in your head, and you have an opportunity to alter that memory by changing the action that you've connected it to, by changing how it makes you feel, by realizing that this is part of your past, a prior wound coming up in the moment, and as such is connected to a limiting belief. You're able to do this in private, inside your head, when you internalize these concepts of the drama triangle. I just want to make sure I'm giving you all the context so that it actually makes sense, and that you benefit the most from it. When you understand the drama triangle, when you're sitting by yourself, what you want to do is you want to look at prior events that upset you and say, ooh, am I doing this dance? Did I go into one of these positions? Another thing to understand about the drama triangle is you can go from one position to the other. Okay, let me tell you about the position so that you can imagine that effectively. There are two top positions. They feel powerful, but they're not efficacious. They are bound to the identity threat, so they're kind of in a fear mode, and they're trying to get stuff done. And then at the bottom, you have a third position, which feels less powerful. The top two positions are called the hero position, the villain position, and the third one is called the victim. The bottom position is called the victim position because you feel disempowered in that moment. Now, remember that all three of these positions, when you look back on the actions that happened that you may not have caught in that fleeting moment, you feel bad about it. It doesn't feel good that you acted in a certain way. It was out of alignment. It wasn't your higher self. These are your lower self ways of being. Okay? Up top, the top two, hero and villain, they feel powerful. The bottom is the victim. Feels less powerful, less expressive, less heard, less acknowledged, less validated, less connected to meaning, less intrinsically motivated in that moment. Less motivated in that moment. I don't want to say intrinsically motivated because the villain and the hero, they're more triggered. They just don't realize it. They feel powerful, but later on they'll feel bad, and that leads to a delayed sense of disempowerment. Okay? So I want to start with the victim. The victim is a feeling as if you're stuck. Okay? Ironically, it's the first stuck position. It's sort of a state of paralysis. I can't get stuff done. Nothing I do matters. I'm practicing and I'm not seeing progress. I don't trust this process as much. I'm not feeling connected to my vision. And usually it's because you've been triggered. Okay? When you're in that state, you develop a resentfulness. Often in the victim position, you develop either a neediness, where instead of focusing on the learning, focusing on the journey, and focusing on having the vision in mind with such clarity that the feedback you're getting from the person helping you, your mentor, your coach, your guide, instead of hearing their feedback, you could either be in a super needy state where your goal is to behave in such a way that they continue to do the stuff for you. Okay, so there's a clinginess, there's a dependency. This is a codependent dynamic. So that's in the victim position. That's one of two ways. Or you could be behaving in a defensive way where instead of being honest, vulnerable, and transparent and authentic in that moment, such that you're able to grow from your mistakes, you're defending yourself from a villain slash persecutor slash tyrant. And I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay? Now, another thing about the victim position, when you're dealing with a villain in that interaction, is that it attracts a hero. This is where the triangle kicks in. And next thing you know, instead of being self-efficacious, someone else comes up and they're either like, I'm going to do it for you, or it becomes about the drama. Suddenly you're watching two people fight over the fact that a villain is treating you bad, talking to you in the wrong way, is being too much of a tyrant with the rules, and then it pulls a hero into the dance, and the hero and the villain are arguing back and forth instead of you getting shit done. Okay? So this is about information exchange and allocation of energy. You're wasting time. You're not on your path to your vision. Instead, you're stuck in this stuff where at the end of it, you walk away from that situation feeling as if you can't do for yourself. You haven't learned anything new other than how to watch two people argue and get nowhere. Okay? Now, from the victim position, often it's uncomfortable. There's a sadness, there's a sense of grief, a sense of disempowerment, a sense of loss. So we often want to ricochet out of that and get a sense of being powerful. And one of the ways we can do that sometimes is as we start to learn rules, we decide that we don't want the goal that we don't know anymore. We stop growing, stop being honest about who we are and where we are on our journey, and we jump to basically taking what we know and instead of growing and learning and becoming nurturing to those behind us, we jump into the villain position, decide we're not going to grow anymore, decide that the dream is unattainable and anyone pursuing it is stupid, and get more focused on looking powerful and feeling powerful. We want to stay in that state. We don't want to be vulnerable. We have this mask of power that we wield by punishing anyone who challenges our perception of reality, challenges the mask that we're putting up, instead of being authentic and reflecting on what people are telling us, or instead of respecting the personhood of a person who is stuck and needs help and is confused, is having self-doubt and doesn't believe in himself. As a villain, we pounce on that opportunity to feel more powerful, feel like we know more, even though we only know about losing. We know about being stuck. And so we keep that person in the stuck state because in that dimension, in that version of reality, our truth matters. This involves discouragement. This involves, as soon as someone comes up with the beginning of an idea that doesn't fit with your worldview, projecting your judgment onto it. One of the characteristics of villains is that they suck the energy out of you, and they do this with their feedback, because their feedback is more criticism, as in it attacks who you are. It attacks the behaviors you've done in the past and knocking you into the past, and even sometimes knocking you into the future where you project a negative outcome for yourself because you have this toxic person who feels powerful, who understands the rules, but is projecting loss onto you so that they can keep you dependent on the path of loss. They're taking advantage of your self-doubt. They're taking advantage of the moment in which your idea and your thought is so new that you haven't fully gotten used to it as part of you, and you don't fully know how it fits and connects to your purpose, to the point where basically the villain causes a missed opportunity. An opportunity for learning, an opportunity for growth becomes an opportunity to be reminded of the things that are your weaknesses, your prior failures, to keep you in a sense of low self-efficacy. And if you remember my prior video about intrinsic motivation in video 2, in order to have intrinsic motivation, there's two aspects. There's a belief that you can do it, which is feasibility, which includes belief that you can do it, belief that the world works in such a way that if you pursue it in a focused and determined and clear enough way, you will be able to attain the outcome. And desirability, do you even really want it? A villain can convince you that you can't do it, and as such, a lot of us, our brains, when we can't have something, we go into sour grapes. We devalue that thing as a way of coping. It's a mechanism of self-regulation. Okay? So that's how villains take advantage of a moment, and they're stuck in identity. They haven't been able to continue to make growth, because people who can continue to make growth believe in the ability of others to grow. They see the beauty in people. They see your strengths, and they remind you over and over again, these are your strengths. Let's look at solutions. Let's brainstorm together. You come up with the dumbest ideas you've ever thought, and let me hear them so that we can show you how these ideas are the seed of something, of some aspect of what your desired outcome is. These small ideas that are so vulnerable, so fragile, are the seed of what you value, the seed of who you believe yourself to be in the moment, the seed of your eventual destiny. Okay? I think I completed that thought. That's villain. Okay? Now, one more thing about villain. There's two key types of villains you'll run into. You'll run into a persecutor, where you just can't do anything right. This person will point out all your mistakes before they're even really mistakes. Basically, as soon as they see you acting, they jump in, and they already tell you what's wrong with that mistake. And it leads to a certain defensive perfectionism, where you're afraid to act. The whole time you're in your mind, you walk around imagining this person pouncing on you, and you develop this people-pleasing, what would people think, what are people saying behind my back type of mindset. That is sort of a persecutory person. The other one, which is also slightly persecutory, honestly, is the tyrant, is how I imagine it. The tyrant is a person who is so hell-bound on the rules, and again, evaluating you according to these rules, and they lead your thought back into the old. They knock you into the past so you can't stay present to the opportunity in the moment, because all they're projecting onto you is how in the past these are the rules that society, culture, and your past identity group, your tribe of origin, have lived by. This creates a sense of threat on who am I, because you feel in your imagination that you're running the risk of being not only devalued, but being ousted from your tribe. And in our subconscious software, being ousted from your tribe meant starvation. It meant being eaten by saber wolf tigers. Is that right? Saber wolf tigers, and just it meant a very certain type of death, to the point where your immune system shifts so that when you're dealing with risk of being outed, remember, your subconscious mind is a prediction machine. So what it believes is going to happen next is what it prepares your entire body for. This person is essentially knocking you into a pretty threatening and scary future, and as such, your immune system prepares for being ousted. Your old subconscious prepares you from being ousted from your tribe, getting eaten by tigers, getting injured, and whatever, all the dangers that we culturally in the collective unconscious imagine happen when we get ousted from our tribe. As a result of that, you get immunological profile that's more bacteria, more feeling isolated, feeling it takes you to an immunological state that happens to involve a sense of withdrawal, a sense of shame, high cortisol, whereas, and this is fight, flight, the immunological profile that goes with fight, flight. I'm about to fight. I need my immune system to be ready so I don't catch an infection from this fool. I'm about to be kicked out of the tribe. I'm about to, not only am I going to have to whoop someone's butt and possibly lose and drop in social status and be kicked out of the tribe because I'm less valuable, even if I do get to stay in the tribe, I'll probably be getting less good food, less good choice of mating opportunity, and so on and so on. So your immune system kicks in that moment. The other immune profile, if you're not being triggered, is the tendon friend profile, where your body prepares for a viral attack. Now, what's neat about this is when your body prepares for a viral attack, it's in that tendon befriend mode instead of fight flight that I mentioned, because your body is imagining that you're going to be surrounded by people who you love, but they're going to have germs. They're going to have viruses and stuff. So they're going to be coughing and stuff. Not everyone washes their hands and so on. So your body prepares for these viral attacks by going towards a more immunological profile and a more viral immunological profile. And one of the things that goes with that viral immunological profile is just a feeling of connectedness, a feeling of belonging. Now, there are some viruses that does not go with, but keep in mind that viruses have evolved to spread in a very specific way in an environment where people are close together, and so we've co-evolved to, when people are close together, be better for viruses, but not let it, most viral illnesses, I can't even say that because that doesn't feel scientifically right, but in my mind, in this model, your viral illnesses, when you have an immunological viral profile, you're going to clear up the stuff inside you and kill the bacteria, but you're going to do it in a way where you want to stay engaged with folks, and just there's less of a shame profile in it in my mental model. Okay, so that's the villain. That's how the villain knocks you out of integrity, knocks you out of the present, disconnects you from truth, and disequilibrates that core model that I keep going back to, where the way your brain works is that you imagine a future state, you imagine how good it will feel, you do the math to see what it's going to take in a deep, visceral way where you visualize it in full color, vision board details. Some of the latest studies, some of the latest stuff that I've been reading points out that it's not enough to just have the vision board. When you glance at the vision board, you want to turn and activate your imagination such that you're seeing yourself. It's important to see yourself in the vision, walking through the vision. Okay? Now, what happens when we're attacked is that we hop out of ourselves, we dissociate, because we see the story, we try to see the story from the other person's point of view. And this is, in some cases, it becomes identifying with the aggressor, where you're like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? What is it that I'm presenting that's causing me to be attacked? And if it's not just a dysfunctional interaction in the moment, but a toxic person, you develop that, why do I keep attracting this kind of person in my life? Why am I stuck in this pattern? And often, if you don't have the insight to realize that it's a pattern, you mistake it and make the inference, why are people this way? You know, and then a lot of times in society, they push the mythology about rich people being selfish, a shortage of men, a shortage of physicians. These shortage scarcity models that they push out cause you to quickly assume that the person in front of you is the only person type that is out there, that you need to hurry, you need to allow people to continue to treat you in a way that doesn't feel good, because there are not that many other people out there who will be willing to love, nurture, support you. Okay? That's the villain. I think I pretty much covered that in enough detail where I feel cognitive closure. Outstanding. the hero. The hero is an entirely different dynamic. This is, again, this is a person who also, in this diagram, a hero is not a great thing. This is someone who comes through, and a better word for it is rescuer, but hero is easy to remember. This is someone who comes through, and they may initially believe that you can do it, but at some point, it just gets good to them that every time they help you, you're so grateful. Now, keep in mind, you're feeding this dynamic because what you're doing at the same time is every time they help you, you're over-rewarding it. And this is someone who has a little bit of self-doubt themselves, so they don't have as much of an internal locus of control, and that external validation, those compliments, that flattery, sets them on fire. They just keep doing more stuff. Instead of doing the hands-off and seeing if you can swim on your own, they basically are super overly helpful to the point of, it's nurturing to the point of suffocation, because the message it sends you is that you're not capable. You need this person to continue the journey. And here's what's less productive about it. Even if this person is moving forward in their journey, they're moving forward with sort of this lower self-efficacy energy. And as such, even if they have mentors and coaches and a support system, they have that suffocating, overly nurturing dynamic of codependency in their entire tribe. Okay? And if you're in it and you're feeding into it on your journey, one day you will look up and realize that you followed a tribe into a certain conformity and complacency that at one point felt good. You know, you were enjoying the cookies, but at some point you decide that you should have been you wake up and realize you should have been on a low-carb diet. Okay? So, the thing with the hero dynamic is that it keeps you stuck because you don't get to fail. You don't get to fail, and if you don't get to fail like a lot all day, you don't learn the cues that you're wandering off your true path. You, with an internal compass, you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice every day, every moment. When a cue comes up, it's an opportunity to practice. When a cue comes up and it's an opportunity to run and call someone, you're fostering a codependency that leads to you eventually not unfolding to your full potential. The reason it works that way, the reason a person gets pulled into that dynamic is if they've gotten to the point in which they're less task focused, they too feel a sense of stuckness, then the rush of value-based decision making, the rush of anticipating the sense of achievement that comes with each accomplishment is not as rewarding for them. And as such, they develop what's called incentive salience. If you Google incentive salience, you'll find that it's associated heavily with different types of addictions. In this case, it's an addiction that we're going to call a codependency. You get addicted to the emotions that this person triggers in you. And even if you walk away from that person, there's a high probability that you will continue to fall into the pattern and look for surface cues in the next interaction that this is going to be another super nurturing person. Now, where the growth comes into play is that when you commit to growth, you develop the ability to create non-codependent interactions where you're communicating with the person in such a way that you're able to get the information from them without them damaging your self-worth. And I've mentioned this in a prior video, but we're moving from a position of there's two types of feedback. This is a rough cut. There's always subcategories of all these different things but for now, for rough cuts, there are two types of feedback you need to be attentive to. There's evaluative feedback and descriptive feedback. Evaluative feedback conflates the task with your identity. Evaluative feedback is where someone tells you that you did the task well, and then they slip in suggestions that you are a good person as a result of doing the task well. Okay? In the mindset literature, it knocks you into a fixed mindset. This is when you tell someone they're smart when they do well, as opposed to when you tell them that you admire the effort they put in and acknowledge that this was a challenging task, so that they continue to focus on being purpose, value, decision, and action-based. They start to believe that life is more about doing and presenting this mask than it is about being and discovering and acting on your inspiration, your urges, and your true self. Okay? So this is where you'll often hear people talking about separating from ego, disconnecting from ego, and listening to your intuition, an urge comes up, and the urge, before it's in your conscious mind, it doesn't have either of those words attached to it. Those concepts haven't been activated yet. It's when you decide in the moment that something feels bad or good, to the point where it's either a pleasure or pain that keeps you bound to the circumstance, bound to the outside environment. That's the point at which an urge becomes a manifestation of your intuition, because you pull back what you believe. You pull back an opportunity based on, you pull back an action chain, an intentional set of actions. And you take action based on what you've told yourself is either what you will do in this situation, or if it's an absolute new situation and you can't think of any similar situations, your brain is coming up blank, you make a choice based on your values, what is most important. And those values don't collapse into being ego defense. As such, you don't fall for the ego narrative. You don't start telling yourself a story that gives you permission to either drop into the victim position or to pop up into the villain position and develop the cynical, negative life view with the belief that you're stuck. And also, you don't tell yourself stories that lead to you popping into the hero position, where you start looking for other people who are equally stuck and feeding them all kind of feel-good information, knowing that you haven't achieved the thing that you're telling them about. You just know how to feel good stuck in that state. That's the suffocating codependent nurturing. And so you end up building a tribe that is stuck with you, and you can build a business that way. You can make money that way. A lot of your cults and sub-religions and even brands for products that aren't really effective work just like that. So I know what I did. I went down a rabbit hole, and I did not discuss the two branches of, I didn't thoroughly discuss the two branches of feedback. So I mentioned the evaluative feedback. Evaluative feedback conflates the task with your identity, shifts your attention and thus your energy onto identity defense, into looking like you're doing it right, as opposed to into focusing on the task, and as such, asking yourself in a more, when you focus on a task, your energy goes into that representation in your mind. That's focus. That's clarity. So you don't have this, you're not activating an idea of threat and a fear at the same time as you're activating your values, your desired outcome, and a feeling of love and attraction. Okay? I know that sounds super abstract, and y'all know I like formulas and models and math. So if you want to geek out and know the math under all of this, I got you. The models we can use are Carl Friston has a free energy model. He called it active inference model of consciousness, which breaks all this down, where if you could find someone you can trust who is doing something that you want to do, your brain allows you to go into a hyper imitation mode. You can do downloads from the universe, is what some people say, where you model what the person in front of you is doing with full trust. You can't do that with evaluative feedback, because part of modeling the person's mind to get that information involves modeling how they see you and how they perceive you. And if someone's giving you evaluative feedback, part of the full model of their mind involves insults to you, and involves a model of you, a reflection of you, in which you are incapable of getting the desired outcome. So basically, modeling that person's mind gets you stuck when their feedback is evaluative instead of descriptive. Now, descriptive feedback is specific. I've talked about this before, but it's worth repeating. Descriptive feedback means if I come to you and I say, and I'm lost, and I say, I'm trying to get to New York, and I'm heading north, and I'm in Canada, or somewhere between the two, but heading north in the wrong direction. Descriptive feedback is like, hey, what I've had success with when I got to New York is I took this road. It took me about this number of hours. Actually, I made the same mistake. That's why you see me with a house here, because last time I got lost and ended up here, I had a moment of serendipity and realized I liked it here. But that's not where you want to be, stuck here, if your goal in the moment is to get to New York. You get to New York that way. It was a pleasure meeting you. I wish you the best of luck. Okay? Descriptive feedback can be something as simple as change your angle, focus on something different, change your attitude, get more rest. And by change your attitude, I don't mean insulting your attitude, but pointing out to you, my coach says from a place of love as opposed to from a place of fear. I have positive emotions about you. I feel good about you. I see the specific mistake you're making. I've made it too. I feel a sense of compassion, and I understand. I'm not judging you and devaluing you as a person. I'm not knocking you in my mental model down into a victim position so that suddenly I can either over-nurture you and a one-up and feel powerful because, ooh, look, a victim, that I can keep a victim for a long time so I can feel smart, or going into the rule-based, overly tradition-bound model of becoming a tyrant in that moment, or becoming a persecutor and beating you up with the negative feedback. So basically, the main point is that, remember I said earlier that these models, we split into these multiple models in our minds, okay? So after you walk away from this person who has this dysfunctional interaction with you, you walk away with a sense of lower self-efficacy. Or you walk away, and that's when you internalize it. That's in psych we call it an internalizing disorder, where you're like, oh, something's wrong with me. And as such, you strive lower for at least a few minutes after you interact with the person. And based on if they hooked into something from your childhood that is a deep enough wound, it stays with you so that you feel like you are a broken person in a cruel world. And as such, you withdraw and you're less likely to take action. You're less likely to learn from your mistakes, because even as you do approach behavior to try to get something that you know you want, you do it in a reticent way such that you decrease the likelihood that the outcome that you get from the action in that moment is in alignment with your true capabilities and up to your potential. And then you see yourself doing less than you know you can inside, and then it feeds into that feedback loop of feeling lesser than, feeling unworthy, feeling undeserving, feeling out of integrity, feeling disempowered. So I think I covered descriptive versus evaluative feedback and how they affect you. Now, what I want to underscore, and again, I'm super nonlinear, so I'm holding these multiple thoughts and I'm multi-threading between them to make sure I close each loop. In the written version, after my editor gets to it, it'll be less painful. If you're a nonlinear thinker, then you're riding with me and it's extra fun. Then you could probably work with me better one-on-one. If you can't do the nonlinear, then you're not a good candidate for coaching with me because it would drive you backtrack. There's that. Okay? So, what was the last thing I wanted to go? What loop did I want to go back and close? Or where was I? So, the damage that happens with dealing with toxic people and dysfunctional interactions is that when you internalize these models, one or two things happen. You either believe something is wrong with you, which is an internalization disorder, or you believe that the world is cruel, selfish, and hateful, judgmental, and as such, you internalize this model of hyperactive inner critic, where you have this negative, criticizing self-talk that is really there to defend you, to protect you from this dangerous, dangerous world. And it's running all the time, and that goes back, knocks you to this beta state where, your higher frequency loops are with a focus on the outside world. Danger, looking for, scanning the environment for danger, never getting the opportunity, or at least less frequently getting the opportunity to shift your system into a parasympathetic, relaxed, present, truth-focused mode where you're doing the introspection. Who am I really? What are the things that I want really? What are the steps that I believe will lead to it? What are the dangers that I believe exist between here and my win and my destiny? Because they're my dangers. I can either stop here, freeze in life, and live a half-assed life, or face these fears and use these fears as a sign that, as an opportunity to develop character and courage. So distraction from your goal leads to you having a bunch of these threat-based and, frankly, irrelevant ideas. It leads to what they call accumulating enough stress to get an executive dysfunction. Is it executive dysfunction? Stress-induced executive dysfunction is the word they're using out in the world now. So it's another way of saying you're stuck. So if the stress lasts long enough, then it becomes that you have an anxiety disorder, whether it's a generalized anxiety disorder where you walk around all the damn time with anxiety, or a probably a social anxiety disorder if you developed an internal model of a cruel world where your inner critic comes to life really, like, you have a really, is it a low threshold or a high threshold? Low threshold. Your inner critic is easily activated, and as such, in most interactions, you tap out in moments of intimacy due to the uncertainty because you assume that the unknown is going to end up with this person being another cruel person. Okay? Now, the importance of that is that you end up interpreting new events as threats instead of opportunities. That's the part that's damaging. And then when you're alone, listen to your self-talk when you're alone. If they call this self-alienation. It's like if you divided yourself into these two parts, where there's one that doesn't believe you can do it and has that self-doubt, even if for a moment, and then if you rapidly have this inner critic that pounces in and starts beating you up or whatever, saying, oh, you can't do it, negative thought, negative talk, negative talk, negative talk. If that kicks in early, you either hear it inside yourself and you get angry and you're disconnected from what's happening outside because that inner critic is so loud, or you do what's called projective identification, where you allow and attract people into your life that sound like this so that you can get that cognitive closure. You can get the coherence that what you believe exists truthfully in the world. You attract what you think about. You attract what you believe. That's if you start attracting villains into your life. If you, in some point in your life, develop a belief that this is all that you're deserving of, and that you can't work without kicking yourself, feeling guilty, and that angry, negative self-talk, and the belief that it's coming anyway from someone, and you start to imagine them, you get that cortisol rush, you get the adrenaline rush, and then suddenly you find yourself productive, and you get used to that way of being in life, and you assume about yourself that you don't have initiative, and so you need this internal voice that you've basically created that is more amplified and probably crueler than anyone outside in the real world because it knows so much about you because it's a product of your imagination, and as such, it's been watching you all your life. Or you create the internal voice of the nurturing the hero. Now, the subtle aspect of the hero that makes it such a trap is that it's a loving voice in your mind. But if you dig into it, behind it, you're revealing a limiting belief that you can't accomplish his destiny. So I'm gonna love you all broken and stay here with me and it's safe. And you get to put that bullshit in your head and you stay there, okay? Because you don't feel bad enough, and you numb the discomfort to the point where you're not activating yourself. That's the trap, and it feels good. The metaphor I think of is, I think it's the Elysian Fields, God, now I'm gonna freeze up. Is it what's Dude That Stole Fire? Dude That Stole Fire. It's not Ulysses, or was it Ulysses that got caught in the Elysian Fields on his journey? But I'm thinking about the other dude. Poseidon's son. Am I even thinking about that right? I've been watching too many of these shows with my kids, so the metaphors get conflated, and again, I have source amnesia. But I just know that the metaphor of the field of poppies where you fall asleep, time passes, and you forget what it is that you set out to do, and it feels decent. That's the trap of being in a codependent, suffocating relationship with a nurturer. It feels good. Now, the funny part about it is that when you're in a relationship with an over-suffocating nurturer, and that's who you're using as your reality creation point, when you try to get independent, that's when you see the toxic aspect of it, because suddenly now this person, instead of acknowledging that you're now on your own path and you may need different mentors, new coaches, new approaches, they decide it's time to knock you down a notch back into victim position because they need you in that victim position because they need you to stick around. This happens a lot in the coaching industry because we gravitate towards coaches that remind us of people from our past because it gives us that feeling that this is a safe place, despite the fact that if you had a dysfunctional upbringing, you conflate love and guilt, love and shame, and you seek people who kind of lift you up on the surface but do subliminal shit to knock you down. when you try to break away from an interaction with a nurturing person, then they're going to guilt you. Hyper nurturing a hero that's been rescuing you, they're going to guilt you. And as soon as you make the slightest of mistakes and you fall down, they will swoop in hella quick to rescue you. Oh, are you okay? Which essentially amplifies the shame. And it's a weird paradoxical shame amplification, because you're like, this person is being so nice to me. Why do I feel like utter horseshit? It's because the goal is to get to where you want to get to that destiny. And somewhere on a subconscious level, you know you're self-sabotaging by sitting here and let someone pat your ass. Get up. Pardon my French. I hope there are no children around. Most people who work with me know not to have children around when we're talking, because it's real talk. I mean, you can pass the lesson on to your kid, but you might not want to get it from this messenger, right? So it gets to where you get entrenched and embedded with this person who amplifies your fear so that they can keep you in the victim position. And it feels good because as soon as they remind you of who you were, keeping you trapped in the past, and get you to worry about this scary world out there, the very world that has kept them from developing a growth mindset and moving forward. As soon as they get your mind clearly distracted by that, you're no longer thinking about your vision. They've projected their vision, complete with fear, into you by using love. So now you're conflating love and guilt, because instead of making your decisions based off positive emotions, inspiration, when you feel that urge, hey, Dr. Bob, thanks for joining me in Asylum. So you confuse it. In that moment, you feel guilty for the desire to be independent. And when you reach, what happens to us is when we have a negative emotion, in order to self-soothe, we go inwards. We activate the representations of prior people that have helped us, prior people that have moved us along the way, and people who have been there during our formative time. And when you activate this, if your internal model of other people and of how the world works has been broken by prior imprinting in your journey, by experiences that have taught you to stay trapped in identity, when you pull them up, you may feel better, so you do get the self-soothing, but you're not moving any closer to your value. Now, I want to say something specific about the feel better aspect. When we're talking about feel better, sometimes feeling bad feels better, because the worst feeling is uncertainty. Okay? Especially, there's studies about neuroticism. Neuroticism is intolerance to uncertainty, to the point where you're willing to jump to a negative conclusion when it's not that bad, and be like, okay, I'll take this. This is what happened. That's not what happened. This is what you decided happened so that you can cope and eliminate the uncertainty. You've taken an opportunity and made it into a threat. You've reacted to a threat, and you shortened your future. You've decreased your potential that you can reach by no longer seeing the opportunities, the affordances, as I mentioned earlier, in the moment. And then you develop the habit of being stuck in that loop. You decrease your self-efficacy, decrease your self-esteem. You gravitate less towards self-acceptance and self-love, and more towards a self-esteem, mask-based approach to life, where you pour so much energy into the social image and social performances that you lack the attention and thus the energy to go inwards, clarify your values, know what you believe, get clear on your strengths, know your weaknesses, surround yourself with a team of people who make sure that when you're operating in your zone of genius, your zone of excellence, that they reinforce you, keep you focused on the vision, so that you remain attuned on an unconscious level to the opportunities and the relevant things coming into your life. Trying to make sure I'm on the right train of thought. So the goal essentially is to make sure that you're on this path, that you have this vision, and that even when you unplug from the vision, so that you can see it from a different perspective, that you're still on the path to that vision, just with more wisdom. I think that's it. I don't know how long we've been on, but I'm pretty sure I covered most of those concepts. Now, what's going to be the next one? I think the next thing we'll look at is how to clarify your values and clarify your strengths. Because once you are clear on your values, you can act in integrity, which essentially means you know what you want, you know how to articulate it, you know how to You know how to act on what you say. So your word is your bond, and it's not just words out loud, but it's words that you put on your calendar. It's words that you write in your journal, your aspirations. Those things, when you shift to the right frame of mind, those things become a magnetic pull. You enter flow. Challenges, opportunities show up where what would be a threat becomes a challenge because you're able to self-soothe. Because and this is where all the self-love and self-acceptance comes in. When you go inwards, you activate your values, and activating your values leads to you enacting your values, making decisions based on those values. You're more likely to step into those actions because they're actions that you feel good about, and then you're more likely to attract a tribe that is healthily nurturing, who maintains psychic boundaries. And even when you have moments where your vision kind of fumbles a bit and you have a little self-doubt, you can turn to them, and since they share your vision, they honestly believe in it, plus they have a positive expectancy of the desired outcome. They're not playing the drama dance. They're task-focused, they're outcome-focused, and as such, they help you return to focus. This is how we use the collective conscious to focus. We find tribes with an aspirational identity that are not only headed to where we want, but are making choices based on values that we share, such that when we get to the goal, we are whole, we have grown, we are more in alignment with who we are, so that the process, a lot of people are into the grind, that's crap. Your process is gradual. It's an incremental, iterative process that involves every day having accountability with people who love you enough and believe in you enough to continue even when you're flat on your back, to see your best self and to remind you and reflect the truth of what mistakes you've made in the moment without adding their own issues into it and hooking into your wounds and getting that good feeling from knowing on a subconscious level that what they've said or done to you is causing you enough pain to keep you stuck in that relationship, as opposed to perceiving the true abundance that exists in reality, in the here and now, and the opportunities and affordances that go with it. All right? That's it. Dr. Manny, thanks for joining me in Asylum. I'm out. See y'all soon with the next topic.